This video is sponsored by Delete Me. Imagine you're back at your parents for Christmas, spending time with your extended family. You meet all sorts of relatives you haven't seen in years. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents from all over the country. You sit down and have a chat with all of them during your stay. And the conversations go the way you would expect. Fun, interesting, lighthearted. But then you go talk to Uncle Bill, and it all goes downhill. When you tell him where you live, a bigger city some hours away, he asks whether you aren't afraid of getting beheaded. Why would I need to worry about that, you ask? Because of the gangs of violent Islamist thugs, he answers, roving the streets looking to murder Christian white people. Not sure what Uncle Bill is getting at, you decide to just shift topics instead. You bring up your studies at the local university. Oh, university? So you hate heterosexual white people now, don't you? What? At universities, students are being brainwashed by woke ideologues, using critical race theory to hate whiteness. This is all part of their plan to destroy us. With that, Uncle Bill proceeds to explain to you how the world works, at least according to him. Apparently, universities are brainwashing camps run by the deep state, the cultural Marxists, the people who drink the blood of children in the basements of Washington pizzerias. The government has been taken over by a cabal of woke, Satanist pedophiles. Donald Trump is waging a secret shadow war against them as we speak. They tried to steal the election in 2016, then succeeded in 2020, and will try again in 2024. When Q, Donald Trump's secret whistleblower operative, drops the final leak, Trump will signal the silent majority, the normal people quietly suffering under woke tyranny, to rise up and overthrow their Satanist pedophile masters, resulting in a glorious civil war against woke degeneracy, led by Donald Trump, the champion of the Christian world, fighting against the moral rot at the heart of Western civilization. At that point, you remind Uncle Bill that Donald Trump was actually a good friend of Jeffrey Epstein, more than a dozen women accused him of sexual assault, and that he openly cheated on all his wives. Uncle Bill's response? Fake news. I assume many of you have had similar interactions with such relatives, who seem to be living in an alternative universe, with whom you cannot even agree on the basic facts of life. Most often, such people get their views from social media, a place where anyone can post anything, and any post can go viral for any reason, to be seen by millions, sometimes tens or hundreds of millions.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
Evangelists of social media, so-called free speech absolutists like Elon Musk, celebrate this fact as a victory for direct democracy, news and information by the people, for the people. Access to unrestricted, uncensored social media bolsters the everyday person as if wielding a ring of power. However, much like their original owners in Middle-earth, everyday people were all deceived, for another ring was made. Deep in the land of California, in the fires of Silicon Valley, tech billionaires wielded a master ring called the algorithm, and they set out to make tons and tons of money with it. But social media companies aren't the only ones looking to make money on you. Others make a living by scraping your personal data from wherever they can. Data brokers, at best, sell it off to some company looking to fine-tune an algorithm. At worst, you can become a target for identity theft or harassment. The safest choice is to keep your digital footprint under control by removing superfluous data about you. And Delete Me, the sponsor of today's video, will help you achieve just that. Here's how it works. There are hundreds of so-called data broker websites out there that collect online personal data. Experts at Delete Me will scan hundreds of those websites and request the removal of your personal data, helping you reduce your digital footprint. In a week, you'll be getting a privacy report detailing what sort of data was found and was consequently removed. Delete Me will rescan those websites later to make sure your data doesn't surface somewhere else. Do not let your personal data fall into the wrong hands. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans by going to joindeleteme.com/Adam20 and use the promo code Adam20 during checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/Adam20, promo code Adam20. Thank you for checking out Delete Me. You might have noticed that social media, especially Facebook, but now also Twitter, is absolutely rife with unhinged, far-right disinformation. That's where people like Uncle Bill usually get radicalized. Turns out the most bombastic, outrage-inducing, unhinged posts are the most profitable for social media companies because more people will see them and the ads placed around them. Therefore, social media companies have a financial incentive to platform and amplify what is most often far-right misinformation. This incentive structure was on full display during the recent UK race riots, where a mentally ill UK-born teenager from a Christian family background stabbed multiple people to death. On Twitter, however, misinformation spread like wildfire about the murderer being a violent, murderous Islamist immigrant. Crowds of far-right hooligans then went on to clash with police, break windows, attack mosques, and tried to set a hotel housing refugees on fire, all based on wild rumors spreading on Twitter. If you take a look at photos of the people rioting, it's a question whether you would be able to have a conversation with them outside the riots about world affairs. Even if they have the mental capacity for it, and even if they aren't outright white nationalists, many of them simply know longer inhabit the real world like we do. Their world, as opposed to ours, is more like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, constantly under fantastical threats, full of villains coming to get them at all times. But instead of Thanos, Hydra, Loki, Ultron or Galactus, they have George Soros, the Deep State, feminists, the woke, and or Jews in general. And social media cemented them in these views. First, by prioritizing and boosting hysterical, bombastic, outrage-inducing, far-right adjacent misinformation. Second, by giving them more and more of the content they click on so that they see more of it, so that they see more ads, so that social media companies can make more money on ad revenue. Third, by simply not moderating the platforms well enough. You could go on Facebook right now and find thinly veiled white nationalist propaganda with tens of thousands of likes and millions of views, clearly against the terms of service. But millions of users being subjected to white nationalist propaganda also means millions of ad views, thus massive revenues for the owners of social media sites. Introducing these incentives into a global online social space is a recipe for an absolute disaster, an extremely lucrative disaster for people like Mark Zuckerberg. And the logical conclusion of this process is today's Twitter, a type of turbocharged medieval town square in all the wrong senses. Mass hysteria, raw emotions, lies and misinformation, witch burnings, lynch mobs, blood libel charges, with hecklers and mad prophets on every corner, further driving the crowds into a frenzy. And the owners of these private town squares make massive stacks of cash in the process, except for Twitters. Elon Musk is perhaps the only large town square owner who isn't making money off it. A person of remarkably unimpressive intellect, Musk's ultimate mistake was to overstep the tolerance level of advertisers when he refused to do even nominal moderation on Twitter. According to the unspoken agreement between governments and social media owners, social media sites are allowed to host anything and everything with the exception of open Nazism and obviously illegal content. Musk permitted the former and mostly stopped enforcing the latter, thereby overstepping the world's most lenient and generous red line, forcing advertisers to leave in droves. Masterful gambit, sir. Musk did all this allegedly because he's a free speech absolutist. He's taking massive losses on Twitter, sure, but it's all worth it, the reasoning goes, because that's the price of protecting freedom of speech. Now, I don't think Elon Musk truly understands this concept. He's genuinely a very stupid person whose core values seem to shift based on how he feels at the moment. For example, this free speech absolutist had absolutely no issue with enforcing government censorship of Twitter accounts requested by India and Turkey, among others. But when Brazil asked him to clamp down on disinformation, he threw a public tantrum over it and essentially pulled out of the country. Truly a genius of our time who definitely has the brain of an adult and is not addicted to ketamine. Guys, he's not a ketamine addict. He does not spend his evenings lying on the couch posting bullshit while high, okay? What's happening to Twitter under Musk is in many ways very educational for the rest of us. It shows us the logical conclusion of uncontrolled social media, of the proverbial town square. Instead of a bustling free marketplace of ideas, it's a den of hysteria, misinformation and far-right propaganda. And we haven't even talked about malicious state actors. What if a country, say a dictatorship with large petrochemical revenues, decides to purchase millions of bots or starts employing thousands of people to spread their propaganda across hundreds of thousands of accounts? What if the big trending topic on the main page you see everyone talking about is a massive psyop with 90% of all engagement being done by bots or troll farm employees? What if it's all fake? What if you encounter so many such psyops that you stop believing anything you see? I can think of a relevant, now famous quote here which I'm sure you've heard before. What is the cost of lies? It's not that we'll mistake them for the truth. The real danger is that if we hear enough lies, then we no longer recognize the truth at all. What can we do then? What else is left but to abandon even the hope of truth and content ourselves instead with stories? And herein lies the core of the problem. The fictional relative I mentioned in the beginning, Uncle Bill, is a person who has abandoned truth and is now living in a world of stories. There are millions of people like him and their numbers are growing thanks to unregulated social media. The issue is that it is not possible to maintain a democracy with such people. How do you hold elections if, according to half your country's population, their side either wins or the election was stolen from them? How do you find common ground? How do you meet in the middle if they think your side are degenerate, Satanist pedophiles coming for their children and need to be destroyed? You can't and you won't. And once the number of people detached from reality reaches a critical mass, democracy simply stops functioning. If two sides of the political spectrum cannot even agree on what reality they occupy, that's how you end up with countries like Belgium. In order to prevent this functional collapse of democracy, social media needs to be hugely regulated. Recently, Brazil banned Twitter for not complying with court orders. While that's a good emergency solution, we need more systemic measures. So here's my action plan to fix social media. First, we must make sure that the people we see on social media are real and not just bots or mass troll farm accounts. For this reason, regular users should be divided into two categories: confirmed and unconfirmed. Unconfirmed users cannot interact with the site. They cannot post, like, share, comment and so on. They can only view content, add friends and use the private chat function. This measure alone would render hundreds of millions of bots and sock accounts effectively useless. In order to become a confirmed user, you would need to go through the same verification process as when registering for an online-only bank. You submit photos of your ID, you record yourself holding up your ID next to your head, turning left and right, and so on. Once it's confirmed that it is indeed you registering, your account becomes confirmed, enabling you to access all features. Your full legal name is displayed at all times, and you bear legal responsibility for what's getting posted by your account. With this arrangement, we'll have cut down online abuse, harassment, and threats by approximately 90%. If you harass, abuse, or threaten someone on the online town square, there will be immediate legal consequences, just like if you do the same thing on the real-life town square. Social media pages should also get a rework. First off, every page must clearly display its legal owners and which country they are operating from. Above 10,000 followers, the owners of the page must publish their tax returns to make sure they aren't getting funded from abroad and/or by dodgy organizations. If a page or personal account repeatedly posts confirmed misinformation, their posting privileges get revoked. I would also disable most share functions. The most I would have is to share content posted by people on your friend list only visible to the people on your friend list. Each post could only be shared once. After you share it, your friends will get to see it, but nobody else will be able to share it further unless they manually copy it and repost it themselves. The idea here is that Uncle Bill and people like him will generally be too lazy to manually repost anti-vaxxer content, white nationalist memes, hoaxes, and so on. In general, your social media activity would only be visible to people on your friend list. There would be no option to set your activity to public. These measures serve to clamp down on the unrestricted spread of misinformation and to restore the original function of social media, to connect with your friends online. I would also establish a certified news organization category, meaning social media pages cannot post news articles unless they can prove they have a real-life press accreditation. Even then, they could only post articles written by them. This is to clamp down on so-called citizen journalists who somehow always end up being Russian propagandists or conspiracy theorists, usually both. And now comes the most important part, the decorporatization of social media. Basically, social media sites would become a functional, lightweight site like Wikipedia with a strong community notes feature. We can also tack on a forum to it for good measure with the same content rules. Such a social media site should also be hosted on publicly owned servers. It would also be non-profit and free of automatic ads. Funding could be done the way many European countries fund their public media, by having each household pay $5 to $10 per month to directly fund public media. This would help ensure impartiality, since there is no political middleman here who could, say, withhold funds in case the broadcaster airs something they don't like. The online town square is also a public service after all. Such a website would eliminate much of the online abuse, harassment, and threats. It would stop the unchecked spread of disinfo and would help identify malicious actors and spreaders of confirmed misinformation. It would make social media a better place by ending the 24/7 hysteria and outrage cycle, focusing on connecting with your friends instead. It would cut out the corporate owners and malicious state actors looking to benefit from people's misery. Of course, proponents of free speech absolutism or citizen journalism would strongly condemn these ideas. Such people thrive in unchecked, unregulated, corporate-owned environments where they can get away with lying or spreading misinformation and propaganda, where normal journalistic standards do not apply to them, where they can piggyback on social media corporations' greed and ride the profit-maximizing algorithm to the top. They want the freedom to say absolutely anything to their audiences without the due responsibility. We must disregard these people. They bring nothing of value to the table except for wild conspiracy theories, misinformation, and often state propaganda. This is what must be done, in my opinion, to fix social media, to clamp down on misinformation, on the unchecked spread of lies and propaganda, and online harassment and abuse, to help stop the erosion of our democracies by not letting people fall into information bubbles, thus parallel realities, through the manufactured consent of malicious state actors or profit-hungry corporations. The alternative is the medieval town square with Elon Musk as the town mayor, a nightmarish concept for anyone in their right mind.